So I started losing my hair. I think it was in my mid to late 20s. And I noticed it was just starting to go out. And I always had a big, thick, full head of hair. So obviously that wasn't the most fun thing to have happen in your 20s. Eventually, I just accepted it for what it was. It's like, hey, it's going. And I was really concerned at the time. I didn't want a transplant because I didn't want it to look like I had a transplant. That was always my biggest concern. Was I always wanted to have the hair back, but I didn't want it to look like it was transplanted. I wanted to look just full and natural. So that led me to the internet, to many online forums of, going in, seeing what everybody's doing, what's the latest technology coming out, what's the next thing. And of course, then you just go into a deep hole digging into all of these different, things that are coming out and might come out, and this is in phase 2, and this is phase 1, phase 3 of trials. My biggest one, what I was hoping for, was going to come out of Japan, and it just kept getting pushed further and further and further down the line. Finally, I was like, okay, this is just too long. This is crazy. Like, eventually it might happen. That'd be really cool. If it doesn't, then I've just waited an extra, 5-10 years or something. That's not going to happen. And so I started searching online for, transplants and seeing the before and after results. And I looked into going to Turkey and doing all sorts of other things there. And it just never felt right for me to risk it, because I knew if I had an issue, well, I live in Texas, so then getting back to that doctor would be a little bit of a challenge. So I needed something that was local for me to feel comfortable. Found Dr. McGrath. It was fantastic coming here, dealing with Steve, with Dr. McGrath, with the whole team. I mean, everyone I've dealt with at McGrath has been just incredible. I mean, it's really what I was hoping for. It made me feel really comfortable. From Steve telling me, wait a few months before doing anything. I was not expecting that. At the time, when he told me that, I was ready to pull the trigger. So it wasn't me telling him to wait. He told me to wait, which gave me that much more confidence in that they knew what they were doing and they weren't, in a pressure situation, which was great for me. Sort of backtracking and going back to just some of the feelings. I never really had the shame of hair loss, I guess, if you will, or felt bad about my hair loss. Obviously, you never felt good about hair loss, but it wasn't something that really bothered me. It didn't nag at me all the time, except, and anyone who has hair loss knows what's happening, is when you walk into those grocery stores that have those fans blowing straight down. There was nothing worse than that, because I wore my hair longer and it would always just poof up the front, and that was the worst thing ever. That was the only time ever that my hair loss really bothered me, was those fans. So I'm going to start a movement against them. But anyways, so aside from that, it's just something that was just sort of a part of life, and I just moved along with it. I always knew that if I had the option of hair or no hair, give me hair any day of the week. So anyways, finding out, about Dr. McGrath and seeing his before and afters, and then especially once the exosomes and exoflow came into play as well, I was fascinated. At that point, I knew I had found the right doctor, and I also felt like it was the right time as well. Before, I don't know if I had gotten something in my 20s, it probably would not have been the right time, because I would have just gone anywhere, had stuff done, and my hair was still falling out. So I would have had, there's no telling what it would have been. That would have been a bad decision for me. So I'm super glad that I waited. So something that was exciting about the exoflow for me was, one, it was a new technology. It's something else that's out, and seeing the results from that. Y'all can look on YouTube and see some of Dr. McGrath's other videos where he took someone who wasn't a patient to having hair and possibly being, able to be a patient, was fascinating to me. I knew I was not even anywhere close to that, but I looked at it thinking, well, if I'm already here, what can these exoflows do for me? What can this do? And, also the fact that it was going to possibly speed up the hair growth after the procedure, that was huge to me. Of course, once I was ready to get the transplant, actually this is something that my hair never really bothered me, other than, of course, the grocery store fan. It never bothered me other than that, until I finally scheduled my transplant and had that done. So those 3 or 4 months in between, for some reason at that point, I couldn't stand the way I looked. It was my hair started driving me crazy. But I knew I was getting fixed, and I was just ready. I was just ready to finally have something happen. So the big thing, of course, was, oh man, I've got to wait 6 months, a year before, 18 months before this all fully grows in. So the exit flow made it to where it's like, wait a minute, can this do it faster? And I figured, why not? Let's go for it. And sure enough, it has. I mean, it's growing in a lot more quickly than I thought it was going to. I was hoping for this, but I wasn't planning on it. So I'm really, really excited about like I said, the newness of it, and it seems to be working really well for me so far. So the day of the surgery, I came in at, I don't know, 7 something in the morning, 7-ish, and it was great. It was New Year's Eve, so I was a little nervous, thinking, okay, does the staff really want to be here today? And they did. I mean, it was the whole nursing staff, that whole team was just fantastic. It was so smooth. I went in, they had a TV ready for me to watch, but I was knocked out in a few seconds, so I didn't watch anything on television. Was out for pretty much the whole time. I forget how many hours it was, but it was from roughly 7 in the morning to about 3 in the afternoon. Maybe it was 2. The time flew by. It was extremely easy, totally comfortable when I went home. New Year's Eve was great. Really wasn't a big deal. I was worried that I'd want to go to bed at like 6 or something like that, and that was not the case at all. So it was a good time. And then really it was just dealing with the next week of making sure I wanted to follow everything to the letter of the law to make sure that I could minimize any scarring in the back. Wanted to get that as super small as possible. So I mean, I did very little lifting of anything, very little movement. I probably was definitely overkill with what I did. But once again, it was in about 4 days, everything started to loosen up in the back. I was able to move around, and then it really became reminding myself, hey, don't do too much. I was trying to make it those first, I believe it was 10 days is what I was recommended, to keep everything at a minimum. And I felt so great after 4 that it really got tough, because I was just reminding myself, wait, you can't do things yet. You can't do it yet. Keep waiting. So that's the big thing here is patience. Once you get the transplant done, just patience, waiting for it to grow in, waiting for each of the steps. I mean, even right now, I'm struggling being patient. I'm ready to have everything in. I'm ready for it to be full and thick, but it definitely already looks better than before I came in, and that was 4 short months ago. So yeah, I'm very happy with what's gone on so far. I Googled, and I think it was a high density, I believe is what it was on his website. It was like a high density transplant or something like that, which was always the big thing for me, is that once again, I was not going to get a hair transplant if it looked like I had one, or especially if it looked like I was thinning. Like, there was no point in my mind to go back to the thinning stage. My hair was sort of pretty much at its end of where it was going to be as far as the hairline goes. So it didn't make sense to me to spend a bunch of money to make people think, oh, this guy's losing his hair. So when I saw the high density, that intrigued me, because I've got thick hair all on the sides and back. And so I was like, all right, well, let's see if we can get this to look normal. Then that's what I want to do. And sure enough, the before and afters definitely got me intrigued enough to at least reach out, talk with Steve a bunch, text him, call him, just hundreds of times probably. And surprisingly, even for me, there was no screening of my calls. I know that he knew my number when it rang, and he answered. And so that was really good. But it, like I said, it was all these questions I had that got answered, and I'm confident that it is going to look thick and full again on the front, and it'll just look like my hair. Yeah, I mean, I would say if you can do it, it's worth it so far. I mean, already, and especially with McGrath Medical. I mean, I'm sure if someone's actually doing the research, you've seen the horror stories. You've seen the things that don't go well. That's why it's so important to choose a doctor who you have the confidence in, that has the guarantees that McGrath does. And so I would say, if you can, at the very least, stop looking for doctors. If you found Dr. McGrath, this is where to go. Everyone's got their own timing. So I would say that make sure you feel comfortable and you're ready to do it. But if you are, it's time to go. I mean, this is, it's worth it. I think that the technology has gotten to a point that just makes it to where, people can have their hair back and have it look natural.